they count in the 279 towards subsidy in the general fund at a specific rate, which is it's 0.1 of the total subsidy. So if the subsidy was $6,000 for a student and they take a class with us, we get 0.1 back for those students. So it's very important, as you know, as I look at that we are capturing those students that are leaving Lewiston High School, because we can also capture some subsidy that goes along with that. And then the final thing that Mr. Webster asked us to just prepare if there was any things we would want to add into the budget. I said I had 3 full-time teachers. I would like to see those 3 full-time teachers be totally in our budget, our 1,500 budget. Again, that gives us more flexibility in where that teacher might be, because sometimes grants really dictate what you have to spend it on, and you don't have as much flexibility there. And then upgrades to the Learning Center, and that really, I think, would probably be something in a capital improvement plan. But as we transition to the new elementary school, I hope that, you know, we see some upgrades and things to Longley Elementary and where we are. So, I did include a picture just to give you a snapshot of some of the things we do. That's a picture of a CNA class. Jen does a great job with that. She has at the graduation, we have a job fair. So one of those people you see in the background is actually an employer that they're getting the certificate and they're moving right into employment. Our college transitions instructor with a student that just finished. And you know, one of the things I've learned in adult education is how much a certificate of some type means to people. So that's why we're getting into the stackable certificates. And then that's Jason Merritt, who we share with Lewiston Regional Technical Center. He teaches our construction program in the evening. So that's a great resource that we have, not only the facility, but also an instructor that's willing to work some extra hours in the evening. So thank you, and I can take any questions.
Opening the discussion to the board. That's right.
I want to make sure I get it right. So the funding for the workforce development that LePage rejected the money for, I know that some folks at the Career Center were laid off or half-time, and they were very involved with some of your projects. How is that affecting you, and is it affecting your budget at all? I mean, was the money part of the programming that
Yeah.
you could offer?
It actually, and that's why I say we're a shining spot in this area, in this state. Our Career Center and the Western Maine Community Action that was getting the WIOA funding, that's now being reinstated, and they have actually been the ones that have leveraged it the best to get these trainings back on track. So they've actually hired some of their people back, and it was saying that 70% of the funding had to go to training, and they were kind of one of the first, we were kind of one of the first LWIBs to say, you know what, we'll comply with that. The most important thing is getting our people trained. And even with that, we were working, and this is, you know, where I think a lot of that authentic collaboration comes. We were working with other ways to fund our construction project, and we didn't find out literally until the construction project began that WIOA was going to be able to be used for it, because we had found other sources that we could do as like a one-time, and JT Gorman was willing to kind of fill the hole until it was taken care of. So.
Could you talked about the integration of work readiness and academic programming. I'm just wondering, on the pathway, is it mostly students who wouldn't have a high school diploma in the United States? I'm trying to figure out if there are programs that we could help with having more, let's say, ed techs for the school systems, because we have a big shortage of those. And are there any like ready to work programs that we could, sort of like the CNA ready to work programs, we give them the training, the soft skills and the hard skills?
Sorry about that. A little bit from Carol Byrne, our HR director, but Bill, Carol, and I have been working with USM about a program. And really, actually, Carol and I were talking offline with it and looking at using the Career Center for pathways specifically for this. And actually, I think there probably is some opportunity to use CSSP, which is Competitive Skills Scholarship Funds, to be able to do that. But in these projects we've done too, is, it's like, oh, construction, there's a lot of jobs, let's do this. And we've learned with our partners that sometimes we put people in a construction training that it wasn't necessarily the right fit for them, but that was the job that was available, which is good. But as we're starting to see the employment crunch, we were at a meeting, Jen and I, and it was like, this person actually really, we should be looking at credits because they might be able to become an ed tech, and that could be a good job, and then get on a career pathway to a teacher. So that's actually kind of one of the newer things that we're working on.
Excuse me, thank you. That was a great question, though. So when do you think that'll be up and running? Focus on ed techs.
I think we're looking at this summer as a cohort, and kind of my piece of that is trying to bring the Career Center into helping with the funding and making that work, that mechanism.
If I could we have a conference call coming up.
The 29th or something, I think.
Yeah, I believe it's next week with USM. We had a little setback because USM was going to make a financial contribution through their foundation, and that was withdrawn. But what we've done is looked at all our substitute teachers, and we've identified, I don't remember the exact number, 10 to 15 that we think with a little help could be well on the way to be credentialed to be an ed tech, and in some cases even a teacher.
So in your, in the form that you gave us today, academic career counselors, I'm guessing that's under guidance on the budget sheet. And then salaries for teachers, well, it says actually admin services. I'm guessing that's your salaries for your teachers? It's 004, is it now? Does that make sense? What number do you want? So it's under salaries, teacher, and then under that is admin services. Salaries, teachers is 0.
Okay, yeah. So if you have to keep going down to the back side of the page. Sorry. The back side, and it's the last two categories is where teachers appear.
The backside of what page?
That, or this budget here. I'm gonna.
All right. Yeah, there's no backside. And I have the cheat sheet.
Oh, yeah, it's this one right here. So it's these last two categories is where teachers.
And are these numbers together? These are different, so,
It's different.
all right. So what is admin services?
Admin services would be Jen, myself, those 2.5 positions.
Okay. And part-timers, are they separated?
Nope.
So could we have a breakdown at some point, maybe email it to us, a breakdown of full-time, part-time salaries?
Yep. I think we could do so. And the other thing is, what you're not seeing in this is all those grants as well.
So funding for part-time or full-time teachers through the grants.
As well, correct, yep. So those last two categories I showed you, the total for adult ed academic GED, and then total for adult ed academic AFLA, those would be teachers that are paid for through the Fund 1500. And then we also have teachers that are funded through our grants.
Okay.
So if I may just interject, if you look at your budget detail book, the
Okay,
green cover
that's my
book,
next step.
it actually shows the individual salaries that make up those numbers.
Okay, good, thank you.
And yeah, and I can answer, if you have a question, just shoot me an email too.
I will, thank you.
Could you, do you do contracts per semester for your because you have full-time, but only a couple of full-time staff, and the rest are pretty much like adjunct, yes? You do a contract from semester to semester, so
More or
it
less.
isn't like full-time, part-time staff that have contracts for an entire year kind of thing.
More or less.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then, like course fees, one of the things you don't see in the budget, and actually Bobby and I had talked about this, is in workforce. In that category, you'll see teachers, adult ed workforce. We don't budget in that because those are based on course fees we haven't received yet. So if we're going to run, say, a CNA class, we have to have enough students to run the class. So we'll collect the revenue, and then we're going to have expenditures attached to that. But we don't show a budget for that.
Hours, a number of hours that part-timers work total, do you have a ballpark, even a guess? I'm just a general idea.
Well, I would say if you were to look at the academic, I have 19 there. I would say probably about 9 of those work 6 hours a week. Those are doing some credit recovery stuff. And then I would say our learning center part-time people are averaging between 10, a minimum of 10 to 25 hours. Yep. And some of those part-time are eligible for benefits based on their classification if they're up around the 25 hours.
Okay, on kind of a different subject, forecasting for the future. I love the collaboration between our adult ed and Auburn's adult ed. I really like the idea of a combined brochure. It's a really creative idea. Forecasting for the future, can you think of anything down the line that may come to us as a committee that, hey, we want to expand this with Auburn, increase any of the partnership, I guess?
I think that one of the things kind of internal for us is to do more workforce collaborations of things, and we've started that this year. So, for example, we both do CNA programs. There's a huge need to do those CNA programs, but we really needed to coordinate that better because we had a CNA program that helped people not only get the CNA skills, but get the soft skills to be successful as a CNA. And then we have just a regular self-paced CNA class that people come and they take. And then we have some with employers, they do earn while you learns. The St. Mary's or a facility pays the person to do the class. They would do those interviews and they would take the best of the best for the earn while you learns. And then it was like, well, what about the people that didn't get in? Well, this person would have been kind of good, but they needed some more work readiness stuff. So what we did this year is we've tried to coordinate that better so that the student might not get an earn while you learn, and then they got into the ready to work that we did here. I think as far as the collaboration kind of goes, the thing, and I've talked about this with Bill, that I'm really focused on my time is around high school completion and getting students into the pipeline that have decided they're going to leave school, or they're really kind of thinking that they're going to leave school. And that can be for a number of reasons, but really trying to work that a little better. And those are students that oftentimes are transient, and my office is my truck. So going back and forth, it amazes me how many times I do see people walking across the bridge and I'm like, wait, that's an adult diploma student, and now they're living over at New Beginnings and they're kind of walking back and forth. So it would probably be around that high school completion, getting people credentials in this area.
I had a few things written down here, and thanks, Monique, for bringing up the workforce readiness and the ed techs and BHP certified. So I'm glad to hear that's moving ahead, as being part of negotiations in the past and having worked with the ed tech contract. That was one concern. As soon as there was always a concern, and then we increased the number of ed techs that we were bringing, I think, this year. And as soon as we reached the level we wanted to, all of a sudden, because we put in more ed techs, we were still behind because we increased it. So it was a good thing, but at the same time, we still have a need. So it's good to hear that we're trying to build a relationship with USM. Is that correct, right? Yeah. So it's good to hear that. Another segment that's come up in meetings here recently, do we have something similar to that with substitutes and or bus drivers? And we'll probably hear about that pretty soon in tonight's meeting here.
So, informally, and I was just actually telling Carol about students that we get that come to our program that have credentials or they're able to be substitute teachers and trying to get them to apply to be substitutes. The bus driving thing is kind of an interesting piece. I know I worked on it when I was the assistant director way back, and I know Jen has worked on it as well, and trying to figure out how to do a bus driver training because they got to get their Class B truck driver license. And that gets to be kind of a difficult, slippery slope because there's if you owned a dump truck and you wanted to teach somebody to be a dump truck driver, you could do it very differently than if you were a training institute and you wanted to offer bus driver training. I think that really comes into the importance of working with the Career Center because they're kind of identifying those needs in our area and trying to put together truck driving trainings in that aspect. So it has been something that we've talked about and we've worked on. We don't have a Class B truck driving school.
Good. Well, I just at least wanted to
Yeah.
throw it out there, get a thought process moving along anyhow. And
That's great.
I'm sure Mr. Pratt might have some suggestions later on. I heard you mention about the collaboration we have with the Career Center and now USM, so maybe some other businesses, other bus services
Absolutely.
in town, maybe they have some ideas too. So that's good to hear. I heard you say something about employers working with you. And I know statewide, especially in our community, even people on this board are looking for employees to work for them. Is there a way, what is the collaboration there and how does that work?
So when we have been creating training programs, it is the way that it's been happening now is it's completely employer driven. So, and this started probably 5 years ago with the CNA training and the Ready to Work CNA program that we had and employers, healthcare facilities coming to the table and saying, it's not just CNA skills we need, we also need the work readiness pieces. And so using that kind of as our pilot, we've now gone by industry, but then pulling in employers to really give us, so the construction training, we had a meeting with a bunch of employers and say, okay, what is it that you need? So they told us the soft skills, because every employer says that. But then they told us the specific hard skills that they needed. And then we went back with our instructor, Jason, and said, okay, this is what they're talking about. And it's like, okay, so we built the curriculum. But the feedback and the information came from the employers and saying what they need. And why that collaboration works well when we're doing it with the Career Center is they have a business liaison, and they're the ones going out to the businesses and saying it, and then we can really concentrate on what the curriculum is. And we're not going, as adult eds, we try to do it collaboratively. So it's not 5 different adult eds in Androscoggin County knocking on the same employer's door to say, hey, what is it that you need? We're doing it more as that collaborative approach because businesses are busy and they only have so much time and energy and resources that they can spend to give this information back. So
Good to know. Thanks for the feedback on that. Summer programs, is this a year-round?
Yep.
So if, I was curious, could a high school student who wants to advance take some classes in the summer?
Potentially on those is to be a case-by-case basis. We do the credit recovery program for the high school. So if a student hasn't earned or a credit, we run the credit recovery. But we have had students in the past kind of petition to say, hey, I want to come and take this course. The way that our policies are written, it is for adult students who aren't enrolled in day school. But that's not to say that we haven't worked with students in the past. Culinary arts program, we've had students that couldn't do the LRTC program during the year. We would run that program in the summertime, and we had students ask if they could be placed in that program. Usually, though, they incur a cost with it.
So I guess it all depends on a case-by-case situation and what's being offered.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. And one of my last questions here, hopefully, is the 65-35 split between Lewiston and Auburn. Could you explain that a little further so we could understand how that works?
Yeah, so essentially, we look at so I'm a Lewiston School Department employee, and we kind of like back 2 years ago had met with the superintendent in Auburn, Bill, and myself, and looked at how we would do a joint directorship. We had an opportunity to try it because I was the adult ed director in Auburn, but before that, I was the assistant director in Lewiston. So this was a great kind of opportunity to look at, okay, if we're going to try a shared director, then maybe we can do this. And looking at the sizes of the program, Lewiston is probably 65% of my time, and then Auburn would be more like 35% of my time. So,
Any other questions? Yep.
Well, actually, now I have another one. Do you feel like that's a sustainable model?
Bill and I talk about this every time we have our meetings. For the past 2 years, I think it's been a sustainable model. I think as it is right now, though, it is unique to the fact that I've been in both places. So if I were to win I always joke, if I were to win the Powerball, then I might have to make a donation back so you could go back to 2 directors, because it would be probably a lot for somebody to navigate. But I think this is going to be a 5-year process, and I hope at the end of 5 years that my position would be very definable to somebody else and very sustainable thing.
My last question was about the vetting for these career partnerships. Are you doing the educational vetting? I can remember doing these partnerships in Augusta, and you do the CASAS testing and all that at the Learning Center, but then the Career Center wanted to take over some of that. So could you just reassure me that the education component is coming from you guys?
It is, and that's one of the we have a really good partnership, and when we're doing an academic type test like the CASAS, that's our reading and our math test that we give for folks that don't know. And that assessment is done through adult education. So if somebody doesn't get the score that they need, we can have a conversation or help them in the pathway rather than just saying, "I'm sorry, you didn't make the program." So that's absolutely something that yeah.
Well, seeing no other discussion, thank you so much. We really appreciate the collaboration you provide. If we look around our school community, Lewiston and Auburn, we often see many of our administration wearing many hats, and which is a cost savings to us, as well as how effective we are with our collaboration between both cities as well as students and everybody else. So thank you for providing your presentation today, and we thank you for your service as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Moving ahead with system administration, and Bobby Avery will present. She passed out some paperwork. Did you get an extra copy?
Can you hear me? Is this good? Okay, so I don't understand why this room isn't full. We're talking about system administration, and I happen to think that this is the best article of all. And it is. So, system administration has 4 components to it. The first component is the school committee. The second is Office of the Superintendent. The third is the Human Resource Department. And then the fourth is the business office. And Carol Burnham is here tonight. And so I'm going to save the HR component of system administration for Carol to speak about. But you do have a few factoids on the HR department and their budget on that one-page handout that I gave to you. So overall, Article 6 realizes an increase in relation to the FY 17-18 budget of 4.6% based on the cost drivers that you see on this one-page document. If you compare our budget increase, our budget, to the total average for the 15-16 year that's on the Department of Education's website, you'll notice that the state average for system administration is 3.11%. FY19's budget recommendation is 1.92%. So clearly, if we're benchmarking to the latest data that's on the DOE website, we're well below the DOE's state average of 3.11. That's great. That means more of our dollars are going towards the regular the instructional categories. So as far as the school committee is concerned, there are not, as you know, there are 9 members and 2 student members. The budget increases are $6,500 for insurance coverage, $2,000 for supplies, and $538 of an increase in dues and fees. The total overall budget for the school committee is $111,404. And you'll see all the way to the right-hand side on your one-page document, I tell you where you can find that in your detailed budget book. So are there any questions over the school committee component? Okay. Office of the Superintendent. And he's the greatest. Was that good? Yeah. That was good. He's my boss. Okay. So in the Office of the Superintendent component of Article 6, that's where Bill is found, that's where myself is found, as well as the executive assistant. And this budget, there's some increases and a reduction in this category. So roughly $8,300 has to do with salary increases. There's a $9,500 increase in this budget. It's actually due from FY18, so our current year's budget, of under budgeted positions. That's realized in the FY19 budget. There's around $8,600 of increases in benefits due to plan changes as well as our overall health insurance rate increase. There's roughly $6,600 in retirement plan increases and changes. Do we have paper towels? That's okay. That's all right. There's roughly $1,300 in increases for contracted services. And then there's a slight reduction in this component of $900 for telephone allocation. I'm going to skip over the HR portion. Carol, I'll let you do that one. You're welcome. The business office. Oh, and I should say, yeah, and you can talk about your staffing as well, Carol. The business office, we see some increases and decreases in this component of Article 6, and they are $6,900 reduction in salaries, roughly $14,000 in reduction in benefits, $6,400 of an increase in the general liability and property and casualty insurance contract. There's roughly a $450 increase in postage and an $1,100 increase for equipment. For an overall budget request of $557,329. The staffing in the business office, that's the business manager, we have a staff accountant, we have a payroll supervisor, we have 2 payroll specialists, we have an AR specialist and an AP specialist. I want to point out, have you all seen that picture of the iceberg? And so you've got the tip of the iceberg, and then you have all of what happens with that iceberg below the water. That, in my opinion, that's what system administration is all about. So we've got the tip of the iceberg going on, and that's, our schoolhouses and our instruction and that really important component, obviously, of education. And then we're found below that water. And there's all kinds of things going on with regards to system administration. And I'm just going to list a few things for you. It's certainly not an all-inclusive list. I could talk all night about system administration, but this is where payroll, benefits, calculating and filing all of our payroll tax forms and payments, preparation of financial statements, district purchasing, accounts receivable, accounts payable, the hiring process, the grievance process, policy work, federal and state reporting, and so much more happens in this article. And I want to say I'm quite passionate about school finance. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm quite passionate about system administration. A lot of good work goes on in this article. And quite frankly, we can't run a school district without all of the people that are found employed within this article. And my colleagues and our colleagues all over the state of Maine are doing the same, and yours as well, are doing the same exact thing that we're doing tonight. And I tip my hat to them. We're all doing a lot of work here, and good work. So that's all found in Article 6. If you were to ask me what I would add to this budget, my answer today, after 8 weeks of being here, is I would need more time to assess. I don't feel prepared to ask for anything more in this article right now, but if you pushed me, I would say professional development. There's a lot of new staff here, and I really do feel Carol's agreeing. Good, that's good, because we didn't talk about that. That's good. There's a lot of new staff here, and I think that they could use some additional training. But next year, during this time, you're probably going to hear a few more additional recommendations from me. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where does the chief academic officer fit into this?
So Sean is actually found in he's outside of Article 6, and I think it's Article 5, I believe. Yep. Welcome.
Seeing no other discussion, did you have anything else?
So we're going to bring Carol up, and she's going to talk about HR.
Thank you.
Good evening. See, it's the best for the last of this Article 6. Wait. Okay. Can you hear me all right? Okay. So starting at the top under the Human Resources Department, the first part is an increase of a little over 4,600, and that's just covering our step increases for our current employees, which underneath this includes myself, an HR administrative specialist who it's written as assistant here. That's the person downstairs that she's not only the person that is the first person that you meet when you come in, but she's doing a lot of stuff for us, HR, onboarding, meeting the new employees for the first time, getting them set up, making sure all their paperwork, and assisting them in any way that she can. And then we have an HR generalist 1, an HR generalist 2, and my new favorite employee, HR recruiter sub coordinator. Lisa has just done a super job this year. We'd like to see our fill rates a little higher on substitutes, but we're now up over 200 subs, and there are many days that we have fill rates of 80. So she's just done a bang-up job for us. And I think it was a good move for us to do last year, and hope to also move into moving some of the subs into ed techs. We've hired 6 substitutes so far into the ed tech ranks. Under increase in health insurance is a 6,100 increase, and that's due to changes in plans as well as the increase for this year. The next one, the 19,850. This is a program that Bill referred to earlier. What we're trying to do is set up a summer program and in conjunction with USM, and to run it with interns through the summer, actually working in our summer programs, as well as taking a class through USM. And then, so we're right now hoping to identify that, and hopefully we'll have good news next week when we work with USM. But so that money there that we've set aside to run this program, and this is actually would be at minimum wage for these folks to work in our summer program. It's a small little stipend for them. Then I have a 1,050 increase in professional development. I have an HR person who is getting their degree, and so we're paying for one program for each year for them to assist them, as well as some other small development, professional development for my folks. 972 reduction in advertising. This is, we're going away from jobs in ME. I tracked this past year where our applicants were applying from, and we only had 3 that actually came from jobs in ME, and we were paying far too much money for that. So we're going to move more towards our social media, which costs us a lot less, and we get much more bang out of that in the hiring respect. And then the other reduction, $3,800, is we had the setup cost for Frontline this past year, and we will not have that this year, and we're working also on reducing with the vendors on other software that's under our budget. So, questions for me?
Thank you, Carol. So you said only 3 applicants from jobs in ME. Why even continue with it?
Exactly.
If it's a $1,500 expense in here.
Well, it's we were going to because that's where our custodial and nutrition. So to have 1 or 3 slots, that's what it will cost us for the year. We have to be. I think we should still. I don't want to go 100% away at this point, but it was costing us $8,000 for the year. So I'm worried about that if we don't have it locally for the custodial and nutrition staff, that we might be hurting ourselves with that. And I'll track it again this year. I'll continue, because now it's a regular question on our application.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see. I know you just mentioned a moment ago that you might be changing software. I think you mentioned Frontline. Are you referencing the computer software that like substitute teachers would use?
We're not going to change that. We don't have the setup costs this year, so that's the reduction that you see there. And then we have other software that we work with, like in the hiring aspect, our applicant tracking. So I'm working on having those reduced, the cost reduced. But the Frontline definitely has gone down because we won't have the setup this year.
Oh, okay.
But no, I don't want to go away. Frontline is working very well, and it's simplistic to use, very user-friendly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
I was subbing in Lewiston before joining the board, and I was subbing in Auburn up until even this school year, and I love Frontline. It's really helpful. It is very user-friendly. You can go on it at like 5 in the morning. You see the jobs posted. You can take it that morning. We got to beat the early worms up, though. The early birds, I should say. Okay, cool. So I really like that we're keeping it and that you're even considering other options to complement it. So
Exactly. Oh, we are looking at, you know, that's one of the plans for next year is to look at that as an applicant tracking or something to that sort. You know, if it all works and works well with Munis, we've got to make sure that it's all meshing together. We don't want to jump into something and have it not work well with what the software we currently have.
okay, awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess before I end, just wanted to say you're doing a great job. Definitely pass along my thanks to Lisa as a former sub in the system. I'm very happy to see the betterment of it. Not that it was bad before, but to get even better, to hit like an 80% fill rate, it's awesome. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol, and Bobby alluded to a little bit about professional development. What sort of professional development do you think that your staff needs the most? And how would you prioritize that?
Well, I think I would like to see developing my HR generalist a little bit more, especially into like family medical leave and the guidelines, the rules, the procedures, the policies. Like that's a federal law, and so you need to administer that. But we also have to keep in mind that we have bargaining agreements too that have to fit into that. So I would like to see more on regulations and procedures that they be able to go to the class and understand why I'm telling them, we need to do it this way and why.
For people who are part of the public school, they're employees and they come to you for training, are there trainings, sexual harassment, any of those basic ones that are yearly? Do you feel like you need any upgrades in those?
Oh, I would love to have, Bobby and I were talking about looking for a video this morning that I'm looking for something more to put out there for teachers and ed techs in the classrooms in handling student, conversation with students and guidelines around that in the workplace. Proper etiquette, proper personal space, and respecting students, respecting each other. You know,
So I guess, I'm sorry. So are these modules that are created in-house? I'm trying to figure out, so a lot of them are canned that you can get from places, but for something this specific, would they be created in-house? Are those expensive to do? Are there ways that you can shift from what you're using now to be more cost-effective? How do those get produced?
I was looking for more something that has been produced already that would fit for us. So it's probably gonna take me more time to find exactly what will work for us. They can be, yeah, they can be $500-600 a video. If you consider that expensive. I mean, I consider that expensive, but I just did purchase 2 new videos for harassment and respect for the individual. So that's been updated, and we have a supervisor one too.
Yes, and being a videographer, I'm aware of those videos, and $500 is actually a bargain from
Oh,
my
okay.
standpoint. I've seen those videos go from $1,500 to $10,000. So, it all depends on the size of the employer. So I've seen that as well.
Can we add that to our, can we have that list anymore, that running list? I'd really like to take a deeper look at the one that we just started. Yes.
Any other discussions before we move on? Was there anything else from you, Carol?
No, just thank you all for your support.
Just real quick, so we're adding that to the list, but is that already in the budget someplace? Any funding for that type of training, Bobby?
Thank you.
All right, moving ahead to option C with student transportation. Transportation Director Butch Pratt will present.
Many of you are new on the board, so I'd like to just give you a quick background of our transportation system. We contract with Student Transportation of America. It's a national company. They're also in Canada. I think they're the 5th largest in the country. They do business locally as Hudson Bus. They came in about 12 years ago when they bought out Hudson Bus itself. They retained the name. They were in their 3rd contract with us, so they've taken the bid. This is their 3rd time. We go out to a competitive bid. They have won it 3 times now. And just to show you how we've grown with transportation, the last contract, the 2011-2016 contract, we had asked them to be able to provide 50 vehicles for us. It was 29 buses, full-size buses, 8 minibuses, 3 of them that had to be wheelchair capable, 9 minivans, and they had to have 4 spare buses on hand for breakdowns or extra jobs or whatever. That was the 2011-2016 contract. We're in our 2nd year of the current contract, 2016 to 2021. We asked them to be able to provide us 73 vehicles, 34 full-size buses, 13 minibuses, 4 of them that had to be wheelchair capable, 21 vans, and 5 spares. So just in that 5-year period, we went up almost 50% in the requirements of the vehicles that we need to transport kids. Right now, we're using, in this contract year, we have 32 full-size buses on the road daily, 13 minibuses, 3 of them that are equipped with wheelchairs, and 25 vans. So we're pretty much right on the button with the buses. The vans, we have 4 vans on the road now that we didn't anticipate back when the contract went out to bid. It's the vans and the minibuses. The minibuses are for special education students within the city limits of Lewiston. And we also have minibuses for a pre-K program that has expanded quite a bit in the last couple of years. The vans, they will take not only in-house students for McMahon, Montello, Martell, but they also handle the transportation needs for students that we transport to Saco, to Raymond, to anywhere in central Maine. And they also handle the requirements of the homeless students that we have. Right now on the minibuses for special education, we're carrying about 123 kids a day with 6 minibuses. The 25 vans, they carry about 144 kids that need special transportation, as well as 31 homeless kids that we're transporting throughout central Maine. So it's grown quite a bit. It's a competitive bid. They've won it not handily. The last bid was fairly close, but they did come out the winner. They're very good to work with. The terminal manager, if I should mention Peter, it's Peter Willett, who is the terminal manager. He lives in Lisbon, lives locally. He's available 24/7 for anything that we need. Very responsive to everything that we need. So good company to work with. They've done well. The buses, or all of our vehicles actually, are equipped with cameras, digital cameras. They're equipped with GPS tracking. So it's come in very handy with some incidents that may come up. It's something that's new to this contract as far as the GPS requirement, and actually 4 digital cameras on the big buses so that we can have the view going to the front of the bus as well. So good equipment. We have probably one of the better fleets in the state. STA, when they take a new contract, they will bring in probably a 90% new fleet. So they will we will keep some of the buses that may have very low miles on them or very good shape, but for the most part, they bring in an entirely new fleet for us. So it's worked out very well. Now to the budget. Uh, my, my budget is probably the least exciting of everything you might hear tonight. It's Article 8. There are 5 accounts within Article 8 that I deal with. The first one is student transportation, which is that's our full-size buses. The second one is out-of-district placement. Those are students that are going to specialized schools such as Spurwink or RETC, Sweetser, anything like that. Excuse me, anything like that. Summer transportation and alternate education. The alternate education is pretty much Poland Spring Academy and Franklin Academy in Auburn. We have student transportation for pre-K and then in-house special transportation, which are our schools, our elementary school, our middle school, and our high school. The entire budget is going up requesting that it go up 4.2%. It's a 4% contractual increase for every unit that we have out there. That will take up 4% of it, and then the 0.21 is we're anticipating an increase in our fuel cost. So we've tried to do that. I've not requested any new vehicles. We have 7 buses that we have aids on each of those buses. We're not requesting any new aids. We tried to keep it pretty much right down to the bare bones. But the 4% is contractual with no control over that. I think everybody has the actual budget proposals, and I'm hoping that in your budget book you have the actual breakdown by account. But that's just about it. It's not very exciting. It's it's just based on the number of children that we have to take to schools and how we can most efficiently and effectively move them around safely from home to school and then school to home.
Mr. Chair. Hey there.
Hi.
So Hudson doesn't do the after sports programs?
They do.
They do?
Yes.
Okay. So we had, oh, sorry. Were you still presenting?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
No, because we had somebody else here discussing the sports transportation and how they weren't able to, they don't have anything in their plan yet for how certain teams are going to get to certain places, and I guess I wanted to understand that more.
That comes in with the driver shortage that not only Hudson is experiencing, but probably every other district in the country. We started the year with, we were pretty excited. We had 4 extra drivers, or Hudson had 4 extra drivers, and we thought we'd be sitting pretty good. They're down 5 now. The job itself with Hudson is it's a non-benefited job. It's a guarantee of 20 hours a week. So it's not there. It's during the daytime, what we used to call the mom's hours. You could work during the daytime. It's a lot of retired folks. They've had some medical issues with some of their employees this year that have really devastated their ranks. Right now, Peter, the manager, he drives 4 hours a day to cover a route. We have mechanics driving. We have dispatchers driving. Yesterday, we had a driver from Sanford, Osako, that we borrowed from an STA terminal down there because we didn't have enough drivers that were able to get out onto the road. My direction to Peter is school to home and home to school is the priority. they take a lot of these sports, a lot of the sports were booked back in the fall when he was sitting with 4 extra drivers and he thought there'd be no problem with that. He usually keeps a couple of drivers on just for that purpose, just for sports trips or field trips. Those folks are now driving regular bus routes every day. And what I was smiling about the trying to get more bus drivers with the instruction. Peter has offered. They advertise heavily in social media. They do their due diligence with trying to bring drivers in. As far as their wages, they're probably in the middle of local wages. What they face for the battle is that a lot of the districts around us, they have full-time employees with benefits, and they will drive the bus for 4 or 5 hours a day, and then they will fill in at other things during the rest of the day. They have a full-time job with benefits, so he runs. We get pilfered a lot. People like to come in, and he'll train them up, and then somebody will come in and snag them. But they do a lot of advertisement, social media. He has also offered for any Lewiston public school employee, he will take them on as a papered employee, if you will, and he will provide all the training. He'll provide the bus, the road test, the DOT physical. He will he'll train anybody that is interested in going out there, in the hopes that at some point maybe they might want to, work a few hours for him as well. It would really pay dividends in our special education transportation, because you might be able to have teachers, ed techs, actually drive the kids on a field trip when he doesn't have any drivers available. And sports teams could benefit from that. You could have an assistant coach or somebody that could actually drive the bus, and he'd be an employee of Hudson, so he could actually drive the Hudson bus and do that. So he's pulling out all stops, but we have run into problems with trying to fulfill all the obligations. We have the buses, we just don't have the people to drive them.
The,
Sorry about that, Ms. Roy. Going there. Just because I'm curious, what do you use to I guess, guess the increase of fuel costs? Is it something that you watch the market for? You watch trends? Is it just
It's
kind of
the estimate that the city of Lewiston uses.
Okay.
I get that from the finance department, and we plug those numbers in.
Okay, cool. I learned something. Thank you.
so when you're talking about training a Lewiston public school employee, I thought the hitch was that you'd have to have your truck driving license, and then you get this additional training
They will take you right from
from
you
0
just
to
sign your
60.
name, and they will start right with the very beginning. They would rather that you already have a Class B license, and they train you up for the passenger and the school bus endorsement to that. But they will take it right from the very beginning.
Do you have any idea why they don't have full-time employees? If this is the reason why people don't stay with them? Not that this is your company, but it's just interesting.
It's the company philosophy. They use part-time employees, and we have had issues. I've been here for 14 years, and in each of those years we have had a couple of days each year where they ran into problems. This year just seems to be really a bad year.
Should that factor into who we give a contract to?
It could, but there was another local bidder. They experienced the same shortage. And actually, they were doing Auburn's contract up until a year ago. A couple of years ago. And then STA took it over last year. But that company faces the same shortage that we do. There just aren't enough licensed drivers with the proper endorsements. You're welcome.
Could you speak a little bit about the tracking that parents are able to track the buses?
Sure. It's a program called Safe Stop. It's provided as part of our contract. When STA submitted the bid, they submitted it with this program Safe Stop as part of the bid. The other company submitted it as an add-on, so it came as part of the bid. It came as, we're going to offer this up to you free, but I'm sure it was in the bid specs, I mean, in their bid somewhere. It still came in lower, so that's a program we have now. Parents can log on to their parent portal through PowerSchool, and there are directions right there where you can sign up for the mobile app and for, I think, just about any kind of electronic device. Right, and now we have right in about 150 families signed up, which it's catching on slower than what we had hoped, but we'll keep plugging at it and trying to get it out to more folks. You're welcome. I did want to add as well, with the fuel cost, we provide the fuel as part of that part of the contract. They fuel up at Lewiston Public Works, and so the estimate that we get from the city of Lewiston is based on what they're paying for their garage. You're welcome.
Glad you Safe Stop came up. I'm one of those 150 that use that app.
Good.
I will say it's you have to plan ahead because there is a delay with it, but I don't know, maybe some days, sometimes I don't know whether the bus is just standing still in one location for a while, or if it's just not turned on, but usually it corrects itself, and some days it's good, sometimes it's better than others.
We've had some concerns brought forth, and I am not a technical guru by any stretch of the imagination, but the manager of Safe Stop is receptive to. I will send him down. Look, this is what one of our parents ran into. Can you check it out? Find out what happened and how do we improve things.
Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with it. It gives a little extra reassurance of what's going on. So
Yeah.
you just need to get used to it. I remember, was it last year, or the year before, we received a few new buses, and a couple of them had some underneath compartments
Yes.
for sporting events and stuff, and we all found that really a relief, really, than having all the equipment inside the bus. How is that working out? And we had the athletic director here.
My understanding is he's very happy with it. I haven't heard any complaints about it. When we put it out to bid, we actually made it part of the bid spec. And pretty much because Jason had said, I would really like to see this, so it just presented itself at the right time that we put it in as part of the bid spec, and I think they have 3 of them that have the undercarriage.
And earlier you heard us talking about workforce readiness and collaborations with the Career Center, USM. Are there currently is there anything going on there with training bus drivers? I mean, it sounds like there's already something happening, but
Hudson picks up a lot of drivers from Region 9, which is Mount Blue, I believe, up in that area. Rumford, Mexico. They kind of go up in that area and advertise heavily. They do get some, but there have been discussions about offering something down here. We just haven't, where Hudson will train their own. I mean, you can go to a facility and get trained and have your Class B and walk into Hudson, and they'll snag you up in a heartbeat. But they'll also, if you walked in tomorrow morning and said, I want to drive a bus, they're gonna start the process. So it would be nice, but Hudson will take it on and provide all the training to anybody that's interested.
unfortunately I'm on the school board, so I can't take that training. I do like the challenge of driving a big vehicle. I've always done well with it. I don't know why. So I just like that challenge. I did graduate from Mountain Valley 25 years ago, and they offered that even students could take the course through the vocational program, where you learn how to drive a dump truck, a tractor trailer, a bus, it was pretty interesting. And I always wanted to take it. I actually got in. It was like $40, and then I had to get out because I needed to take like Algebra 2 or something, something like that. That was important to go to college. But it was I was like, who else that's at the time 16 years old or something. I was like, who else can get that license? And they have I don't know if they still do it. It sounds like they might, but they had a really good program. So I'm glad that we're getting folks from that region. Were there any other questions from, Mr. Webster wanted to say something.
Yeah, I've got a few things for Butch. One thing to point out, and you can see it on near the bottom of the first page of his handout, is we still do have 1.5 buses that are shared with St. Dom's, and they contribute to that, and that's, I think, worked out well
Yes.
all the way around. And I think the school committee also should know, correct me if I'm wrong, Butch, when we had to balance our budget, if you will, we cut out one additional bus that we had initially put in.
Yes, for Farwell. The schools they're filling up.
Yeah, so the intent of that bus, and a bus is $50,000
Yes.
basically, is as we go to 3 classrooms at Farwell, has on average lower class sizes, so we've been using buses to bring students often from the downtown area to Farwell. We've also done with that with McMahon. So that was cut out of this budget, and I'm not sure we can justify $50,000, but I think having that flexibility would have been quite helpful. The other thing I think that the board should be aware of is I think you ought to explain your full job and how that has changed over the last decade.
I keep looking, and it looks like it's on. 2003, I retired from the police department, and I wanted to do truancy work. I wanted to continue working with families and kids. And so I was brought on as a truant officer, and transportation was an aside to that. It was probably 80% truancy, 20% transportation when I first came on. It's done a reversal now. It's probably 80% transportation and 20% truancy. The truant checks are, when I first started, I could probably, if I had maybe half a dozen a day, that was a good day. You got to interact with 6 families. You got to try to make a difference. If I can get 8 or 10 a week now, that's a good week. It's the transportation, like the special ed, for example, or the special transportation, the minibuses and the vans. I have a 30-page document that I work off every day, trying to balance the needs of the students with our existing vehicles. The addition of the 4 vans, it comes at a point in time where you're just saturated and you can't do it with your existing vehicles. When Mr. Webster alluded to the Farwell bus, we get very creative with the busing, and we can make it happen right now. But that creativity it takes up the majority of my day. I send a daily report out to Hudson on changes that need to go into effect for the next day or the following day. Today that report had 14 changes on it, and some of them are simple. Some of them take 10 minutes, and they can say, I have a student, I need him to go here, and I can go through it and find it immediately, and it doesn't impact anybody else. Others, we have, there's only 1 seat on the van available, but that van is picking up right next to this house, so it only makes sense to have it do both of them, but then I've got to find another van that I can move some kids over to. It's time consuming, and it's taken away from the truancy work big time. But
So I wanted the board to hear that, and also, I hate asking you this in public, but I don't think it's a secret, Butch, about your future plans.
I plan to retire August of 2019.
And so, fairly recently, Butch has been moved to be within the nutrition department, and our hope is that some of his expertise will rub off on Alyssa Roman. But I do think that in the next budget, we really need to look not only at how we replace Butch's expertise on the transportation front, but we need to begin to think how we're going to beef up the truancy work. And I'm not sure truancy is the best name of it. It's really providing family supports so that their children are going to be better able to go to school.
More connecting with the families and working with the folks that are within the school and trying to find out what is preventing this child from going to school on a daily basis, and who can I hook them up with at school or some other program to get a fix underway. It's a very important job, in my opinion.
Are you the only one doing that truancy work, or is that shared among resource officers in the schools?
In Lewiston, the school department handles it. In Auburn, school resource officers do it. But the folks in the school do a tremendous job with it as well. The secretaries, the counselors, everybody has got a piece of it. My normal first step is when the school can't reach the family. They haven't seen a student in 3 or 4 days. They call. They can't get an answer. Friends of the kids that the teachers know, they might ask them, and they don't know where they might have been. So my role is more to go out and kind of beat the bushes and find out where they are. But within the school, those folks do a tremendous job of trying to keep up with it.
Thank you. So you're off the hook.
Oh,
But
okay.
Bill, something that the city administrator recently provided to us upon request was those who are in that space where they're eligible and getting ready to retire for the whole municipal set of offices. Would that be something that could be compiled? Those that meet the requirement and will likely be looking to retire in the next couple of years. Just a full list from the department.
I think we're in a little different place than the city. As I understand from my discussions with Ed, there's something like 100 employees that are going to retire. And the city, has very little turnover, like in Public Works Department and places like that. I think that we have typically had 10 to 15 teachers a year retire. Which we've known about. I'd say overall we're a younger workforce, and I don't think it's the same issue, but Carol may have a thought on it.
Gotta move it down though. This year we're currently at 15 people who will be retiring. That's both ed techs and teachers that have let me know. And like Bill said, we do have a younger workforce. When you're looking at the management group, and when I say management group, I'm talking the principals, sped secretaries, our directors. We're a much younger group.
Brewing, sorry. No, I will ask this at a different.
This is kind of a compliment, or I'm not sure what your involvement is, but I know whenever my wife has had a question in regards to busing or whatever, you were always, I mean, I think you know her by name now,
Yes.
but she's always very impressed with the response that you provide her very quickly, very thoroughly, and it's always taken care of. So I really appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
one of the things that we've seen in our community, last year there was an incident at Geiger. More recently, we saw an incident at McMahon, and to have a call response for buses to arrive to help transportation and so forth goes to show a testament of our staff and our community in responding to urgent matters of that sort. So I want to thank you for all that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. And I'm available to help anybody, anytime. Give me a call, send me an email, and if I don't have the answer, I'll go find it. Thank you very much.
Moving forward to facilities maintenance. Facilities Director Louis Turcott will present.
Here we go. I should have learned from Butch. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak to everybody. My name is Louis Turcott. I've been with the school district 2 years, and a little bit my background for the previous 30 years has been in architectural design and construction management, so those are the type of skills I bring to the school department. I'll be speaking about Article 9 tonight, and but I want to give you a quick introduction to the facilities department for those of you who are new here. We have a staff of 51 employees. It's made up of 5 full-time maintenance, 43 full-time custodial staff, and on the average 3 to 5 substitute custodians to fill in for when people are sick or on vacation. All of that, our staff provide all the daily cleaning and maintenance inside and outside of the buildings for totaling 890,837 square feet throughout the district. All those buildings sit on just about 247 acres. So a little bit of ground to cover there. So beyond the cleaning and maintenance of all the buildings, I wanted to just give you a quick overview of some of the other things the facilities department is either involved with or responsible for, and I'll make this just kind of a brief summary. We assist with the emergency management plan. I'm considered the Americans with Disability Act coordinator, indoor air quality program coordinator, district safety program who we assist with. We have 2 of my staff members are on that program. Multiple facilities committees, subcommittees to assist with everybody, all the other programs going on. Energy management and all the LCIP creation and management, and all the way down to the cell phones for all the staff members in the district. Cover a broad area, along with all the other construction projects and all the capital improvement projects our department takes care of. Oh, in my budget, we've got a 6% increase this year. The total budget is $6.7 million, and that's an increase of $386,909 over last year. I'm going to, tonight I'll kind of summarize and go over the changes that directly relate to the buildings in our department. A lot of that, part of that budget includes debt service, salaries, and related benefits, which I'll stay away from, because you probably already heard, somebody's touched on that already. Okay, so one of the first recommendations we're making is to add half of an administrative assistant's position. You'll be hearing from the technology department, but who we're going to be sharing that position with. It'll be one full-time position, pretty much split down the middle, 20 hours per department. Currently, neither one of the department's technology or facilities has an administrative assistant. So when it comes to all the day-to-day task of typing, filing, processing invoices, that's handled by the directors. So if we were to have the extra help with that, it would free us up to kind of focus on where our specialties are and some of the higher skilled areas that I'm trained to do. I don't spend anywhere near enough time with building technology and the construction management that my background offers. So that's right. Currently, that's the only position we're asking for this year. So I'll move on to the building areas. In general, we have some of the contributing cost to that 6% increase. We have the typical economic costs that we see through our vendors, through our mechanical contractors and elevator service people. All have their small percentage of increase this year. And through one of the things we've added in paying closer attention to our indoor air quality issues this year, we've added to the budget a cost for ductwork cleaning. And throughout the budget, it varies per school, and it ranges anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per school. And typically that's broken up into a third or quarter of the building. So we'll be on a 3 or 4 year cycle to get the buildings completely cleaned. And the recommendation in the industry is to do that, repeat that cycle every 4 years. Coming into this, some of the issues we've seen with air quality throughout the schools may have been contributed to that, and dust buildup and the particulates that we find in the air when we do our testing is coming from that ductwork. Okay, and I'll just mention again, in the general budget, we've reduced the cost of the custodial supplies as of this past budget year, and it's helped offset some of the cost overruns we saw last year. Okay, moving on to more building-related stuff. I'll start with the Farwell Elementary School. We saw this year we got 175% recommended cost increase over last year. It includes the addition of 3 offices to accommodate the expansion of educational programs, the addition of a quiet room to comply with federal and state requirements, and we're looking at providing 8 to 10 parking spaces to accommodate the growing staff that's associated with those increases in programs. At Martell Elementary School, which you know is only with us for a year, potentially, where the only thing we're doing there is adding a space inside of one of the existing classrooms for an RTI program. At McMahon Elementary School, we had a 125% increase over last year, and that includes 20 staff parking spaces to help reduce the congestion in the front of the school. We're asking to do fence alterations and repairs to improve the playground space, and the creation of office and quiet room to comply with, again, state and federal requirements of the RISE program. At Montello School, asking for 41% over last year, including painting the front lobby and hallway area to update the colors and improve the first impressions as you walk in the building. It's aged and it's rather plain at the moment. We're looking at adding a door from the hallway into a staff bathroom that we created last year for last year's funds. We just couldn't finish the project. And the current access is through a classroom, and we'd like to close that off and put it out in the hallway. And we'd like to add a custodial washer and dryer to eliminate transporting all the rags and mop heads back over here to Dingley to get washed 2 or 3 times a week. At Geiger Elementary School, small increase over last year. We're pretty much in line with the recommendations we made there. The top thing on the list is we're recommending do an architectural engineering study to look at adding classroom space to meet the growth and program requirements. Creating 2 private offices from 1 larger space to accommodate the addition of staff. Add 8 parking spaces to the rear of the building to help with congestion in the public areas. And replace some of the costly light bulbs in the cafeteria area with long life LED bulbs that will help improve energy efficiency. Lewiston Middle School, we are looking at elevator repairs to meet the requirements of the early state inspections. The addition of 6 security cameras to cover 2 exterior blind spots and 4 interior cameras in some of the high traffic areas. And we're recommending to create a small vestibule that leads out to a courtyard. It's one of these interior spaces that access the band room. And currently, multiple classes will go out into the courtyard while they're trying to use the band room. And by adding a vestibule there, we'll try to keep the interruptions down to a minimum. And last on the list, we've got Lewiston High School. I'll read through this list. We've got asking for 86.7% over last year, and that includes performing a full refinish on the gym floor. Usually this runs about every 10 years. In between, we'll do a recoat. We just take off the top layer of poly and kind of poly coat it again and polish it up. This year,
If I could just interrupt you, because I
Yes.
think some of the school committee members might appreciate the bulk of what you're going over is on page 6 of the blue covered book, where you see the operation of buildings, repair and maintenance, and that's a major part of the facilities budget, again on page 6.
Okay. Thank you. So we bring that gym floor down to the wood, removing all the old striping, replacing that, which hasn't been done. I believe, in talking to Jason Fuller, the athletic director, we're out closer to 12 to 15 years, if I remember correctly. Bleacher motors have failed in some of the areas of at the high school gym, and it's become a safety issue. We want to take care of that before that becomes much of a bigger problem. We're also looking to replace scoreboards in the scorer's table. Those are in need of repair and getting hard to get parts for. They've got some age on them. So we're looking at renovating the old print shop, which is currently a storage room down on the first level, so that we have a place to expand some of the visual arts program. We need to do some space alterations to accommodate moving Star Academy from the Armory over to the high school. That's in the basement area of I believe, called the B Wing. We're looking at repair and placement of the gym doors and the lobby doors at the exits from the building. These doors are all original to the building. I believe that makes them about 45 years old. And repairing them and adding new hardware to old doors is not feasible any longer. That by doing this, we'd also address some of the security issues we have in that area. We want to do renovations to the main entrance lobby area to address some of the aging materials and aesthetic issues. The carpet's showing a lot of wear. Finishes on the paint, ceilings, and all that type of stuff is outdated and should be addressed. We're looking at installing remote door openers to comply with ADA for the students that are in wheelchairs there. We did pick up one door going into the business office last year, and we'd like to keep moving forward with that. And the doors we're looking at, I believe, in the hallway. I think one of those Bill was outside of your office. We try to cycle through replacing ceiling tiles throughout the building. There's a lot, and so it is a process. One of the areas that is in desperate need is the lab classroom ceiling. It's way beyond life expectancy, and it's not attractive. It's concerning. We're also looking at replacing ceiling tiles in the C-wing. Those also met their life expectancy, being told they're probably 10 years old on the average, starting to sag, and so that's why we put that in there. In the C-wing, we're also starting to have some problems with floor tiles. I haven't been able to pin the age of the floor tiles, but they're popping up, and the maintenance staff will go around and re-glue them down as much as possible, but it's come to the point where we glue 1, 2 down and 5 pop, and it's become a trip hazard. So we're receiving complaints on a regular basis about that. And besides the fact that it's not very pleasant to look at when you just leave the blank spots there. Okay. We also looked at, we have been upgrading lighting throughout the high school. As we move on, we've done a lot of fluorescent bulb replacement in the hallways. That was our priority. The cost of LED lights and the upgrade to the fixtures that used to hold fluorescent bulbs has come down so much that we've been able to do the replacement almost for the same cost as buying fluorescent bulbs. So it's been as even swaps. We've been able to do quite a bit of that. Most of the hallways at the high school have been done. I think the only place we haven't done is the LRTC hallways. So in this budget, I'm looking at upgrading lighting in the stairwells. It's a little more expensive. We can't do that bulb for bulb cost because the fixtures don't upgrade that easily. They have to be replaced in some cases, if not replacing a ballast. So there's a little heavier cost than what we've experienced. Plus, when we do get up to replace those bulbs, some of them are incandescent, some of them are fluorescent. You're working around stairwells. It's a very hazardous condition where you're putting ladder on stairs, as you might imagine. So that brings me through the list, and I probably went a little fast. There's a lot of information there. So what I'd like to talk about is some of the projects that we removed from the budget this year, and just to give you an idea of things that were on the list, but we decided to hold off on. At McMahon Elementary School, we have been working on a project to install skylights at a cost of $27,362. During the last renovation that I believe was about 3 to 4 years ago, an interior space was created and ended up with no exterior windows, and they turned around and started using that room as a classroom. It's important to have that daylighting into the room. I don't know if it's actually a code issue, but it's definitely, it's not a safety issue or anything, but I believe highly recommended to have daylight in there, and by putting these skylights in, we'd be able to do that. At Montello Elementary School, we looked at replacing the 4 exterior entry doors on the vestibule. That was a cost of $17,808. The doors are original to the building and similar to the high school gym lobby doors that I talked about. Because of the age of them, it's impractical to do repairs. They're all functioning. The security's there. We managed through it, but we decided to hold off on doing that project. We also took out of the Montello School budget painting the exterior trim at the front entry and all around the gym. Again, like ceiling tiles, this is one of those items that I try to assess throughout the year. And on the exterior of Montello, we're seeing a lot of paint chipping, and we're not to the point where we have wood rotting, but it's coming. And in order to get the entire school done, I would look at doing probably a 3-year to 4-year cycle. So that's why it was started out on the list, but we decided we could wait 1 more year if we needed to. At Lewiston Middle School, in speaking with the principal, Jana Mates, she really is looking for space. And one of the areas, well, the few areas that we could find any space to be had was the old lobby area in front of the gym entrance. I believe it used to be the main entrance for the school. It's a very, when it was originally built, it's a very spacious lobby. It was actually used for a main office during the renovation project. And so now it's sitting there collecting materials, a lot of desks getting stored, and it seems like wasted space. I brought in, called a few favors, got an architect to come in, take a look at it, and we came up with a cost of $15,000 to do a design build project. It only gains us office, but it really gains us some much needed storage space. And the reason for bringing an architect in is because it's an area where it involves egress and fire code, and I didn't feel comfortable taking that on myself. But in talking to Jana, she was willing to let that go this year in lieu of getting the other things on her list. At Lewiston High School, we had $10,000 originally in to renovate the library and well, it's a library storage area currently. I want to turn into a storage room for the tech office. They need a place to store Chromebooks. We reduced that $10,000 down to $5,000 by doing a little bit of the work this year and funds we found, and by trying to keep the labor sourced in-house. We use our in-house electrician and staff, and the only thing I'll hire out is some of the work that's a little beyond their capabilities. And one of the big items we took out was a room divider, a folding wall partition for the multipurpose room. Again, trying to maximize space throughout the high school. They're looking at using multipurpose room possibly as overflow for the cafeteria. There's a bunch of different ideas on how they do that, but one of the problems we ran into when we looked at it is that multipurpose room is used throughout the day for other things, for staff meetings and the like. And we wanted to try to get that as versatile as a space as possible, but at a cost of what I projected, about $45,000 to install a folding partition there, one that would be of decent quality and give it good as sound prevention. We decided to hold that off for now too. Okay, so all those cuts throughout the building renovations objects total up to $112,146. One of the other things that we postponed out of the budget was a recommendation for a custodial coordinator. What we looked at over the past year is a couple of different issues. One of the things is we brought on a new custodial supply vendor. We went from 5 vendors down to 1. What we gained was beyond cost savings by giving them one vendor all our business is a lot of value-added service, like access, no cost to a quality control program, software, and all their assistance in collecting the data to put into that program, square footage, all of our custodial fees, benefits, that all goes into calculating the cost. We're in the process of pulling that all together now. It's a great asset to have, but one of the things we'll need when it's all in place is somebody to actually walk through the schools on a regular basis and perform those QC checks. I envision a person who is in somewhat of a supervisory role, walking around, keeping an eye on the custodians, making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Or just for example, checking a bathroom, walking around with a tablet or something like that, doing the checkoff list, snapping pictures, creating a report, something that's organized, something that the custodians have all been trained on, bringing it back to them and explaining what they've done, how we keep the schools up to a level of cleaning that we expect. So the other part, I mentioned the supervisory part of that position. we have seen some grievances over the past year, and a lot of those different things involve issues that come up on second shift. And currently, approximately 40 of the staff in the facilities department work second shift, and there are no supervisory roles watching over those people. We set expectations. We do the best we can. I have a facility supervisor who works days with me, and we both have made trips out to the schools, random trips to check in on people, make sure things are going the way they're supposed to, everybody's where they need to be. With this custodial coordinator position, we would have that covered. That'd be a big responsibility, that position also. So if asked what I would add back into the budget if I had my choice, I'll skip back to some of the building renovation projects. I don't want to speak for the staff, the principals, and everybody that helped me build this list. A lot of this work relates to programs. But from my own perspective, I would like to see those skylights get installed at McMahon. That's been lingering since the last project. We actually own the skylights. We bought the material. They're sitting in a warehouse with the contractor who did the project, Hebert Construction. And the longer we wait on that, the more likely we are to lose ground. I would hate to see something happen to that. I mean, we own them. They're storing them for us. I trust them, but it's that type of thing where you just hate to see things drag. The second project that I would do, that I would put high priority on, is replacing the 4 main entry doors at Montello Elementary School. I've personally been over there on a pretty consistent basis to assist people with shutting the doors and show them how to get around some of the issues that the hardware is having. Security is becoming a big point of conversation recently, and this school, this set of doors in the district is close to being one of the higher priority ones. The next thing on my list I'd add, I don't know if Bobby wants to add anything, is I talked about the fact that we're making the recommendation to add in an administrative assistant. That would be the full-time position that would be shared between technology and facilities. I think there's plenty of points that can be made to say that we could use a full-time position for each department. I know that, like I said earlier, I don't feel I have the time to put my skills to the best use. I'm spending probably about 90% of my time in the office addressing, a lot of, I two-finger type. I could change that. But it kind of goes, there's a lot of things that I just don't have time to put into. There's a lot of program management. I talked about some of the things we're responsible for: indoor air quality programs, ADA programs, safety programs, all the filing, all the paperwork, minutes to facilities, all the committee meetings, all those type of things would be extremely helpful to get off my desk and onto somebody else who could probably do a more efficient job than I can, with all the interruptions I have going on all day long.
So I'd like the board to know I have quite a bit of experience providing leadership over facilities, and I was shocked when I got here to realize that we don't have a full-time administrative assistant for facilities, and then I realized that we equally do not have one in the world of technology. So I would highly recommend that the board consider taking a look at those two areas, because we're paying a premium for wages. Well, I don't know if you think we are, but but they're taxpayer dollars that I believe are not being utilized to the in the best manner in which they could be. So I would ask the board to consider that.
The last thing I'll cover is I said I wasn't going to talk too much beyond the building renovation projects, but because the budget does include the debt service, I want to apologize first. I've attached on my handout that I gave you this evening, I attached a chart that shows the projects that we worked on this past year under the capital improvement projects. The chart I sent out to you yesterday for review had the wrong chart in it, so I apologize for that. But we did work on air conditioning improvements and paving sidewalks and the stuff you see in that list. So just so that you know, that's part of the debt service that's included in my budget. Is there any questions I can answer?
I actually have three.
Three.
The three offices at Farwell, what are they for? And are they taking up one space?
There's 3 offices. We're looking at putting those offices into in part of the hallway area, into the main entrance, just off to the right-hand side. It's a tight squeeze, but it's trying to make the best use of the space we have available.
My second question would be the 2 offices at Geiger from a larger space. Is that a space that could possibly be a classroom?
No, it's currently a large office, and they've opted to reduce that down to create 2. It's in the main office area right at the front of the building.
And the last one is about the high school and the main entrance. Could that interior work wait to be done in connection with the new arts wing and when we look at that entry area instead of doing it twice?
My opinion would be that we don't know how much that'll impact the front area of the high school office yet, and to wait, it is probably subject to opinion, but if you look at the materials that are there and the quality and the traffic that space gets, I would say it's be a worthwhile investment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've heard during previous presentations that we might, one thing we put on the list was no Martell additional upgrades, given that the building will be repurposed or out of use in 1 year. How tragic would it be to not complete that project, in your opinion?
Again, it's hard for me to speak to the program-related upgrades. The RTI program, I believe, is related to the RISE programs. Martell has recently picked up some of those. I think that's been a necessity for the special ed program. I don't have the amount in front of me right now. I believe it was a relatively low amount compared to some of the other projects on this. Again, without speaking for the department, I think it's a necessary program improvement in order to make that run at that school, make the best use of the space we have.
Okay, and the same question for the Longley repairs, the 5,000 for painting. Could that not be deferred until we know the full use?
I gave quite a bit of thought to that. It does seem like a large amount. We're painting concrete floors. It requires some special attention to get the paint to actually adhere the way it should. But I believe in having sat on the committee and talked about some of the alterations, we're going to be waiting a year for the new program that goes into the building to see how that works and fits, how it grows. And if by painting the hallway floors, I don't think you're going to see any of that go to waste. I think the main hallways will remain as they are, and a lot of the renovations will be interior to the rooms, that type of thing.
I just want to voice, similar to Ms. Hutchinson, that I will have a hard time justifying repairs and projects that will then be undone within a year or a few years. So understanding the strategy behind it would be helpful, because we are cutting instructional supplies in other places. So I just want to make that intent known on my part.
Yeah, just to provide a little more information, I believe, if not mistaken, that space at Martell is to provide more student support services, RTI services, that are available in other schools, and we do not provide to the students at Martell. in terms of the improvements at Longley, not only what's in this budget, but what's in the LCIP, is to replace the exterior windows and upgrade the exterior doors. We're confident that building is going to be remaining and in use. In fact, it's the only way we're going to be able to address the overcrowding at Lewiston High School. And so our thought was, let's do those improvements that are needed now, except we wouldn't do interior renovations until we knew how the space was actually going to be used. But a hallway is going to remain the hallway.
Yes.
This room at McMahon with no natural light,
Yes.
what is that being used for?
It's a classroom. I don't know the details of the.
It's the first year after the project, it was used as a classroom, and that's where this plan was first developed. It's now more of a resource room. So students go in and out, but they're only there for 45 minutes at a time. Still not an ideal situation, but certainly much better than if it were a classroom.
So I want to talk about Geiger
Yes.
parking. There's three parents, Geiger parents up here. So we all know that it's really bad for parking, and I noticed that there was, in here it says 8 staff parking in the rear of the building. Now, this is just my 2 cents. I'm not an engineer by any sorts, but I would think that the most logical place to put extra parking so that there's not such congestion, I think behind the building would be fantastic too for teachers. But right when you come in, there's all that grass right next to all that parking space. That just tarring that extra space would be pretty simple and logical way to add parking space.
I've gone as far as meeting with Butch Pratt over there to watch the bus loops. We've looked at reorganizing how the traffic comes in and out of the parking lot, trying to make the best use of what's there. Then we looked down the road in consideration of possibly adding classrooms or modulars to expand in the back of the building. And then the other thing we had to look at was the cost of creating those parking spaces. And once you reach $50,000, you're into an LCIP, which weren't prepared to do this year when we recommended our current LCIPs.
If I could also add, one of the things that we are working on is to change our conditional building use permit that we received from the city, such that we would have the opportunity to use the present emergency entrance for buses. And this is going to require an application. There's a lot of information we have to gather. We have to do a traffic study, and it's on Louis' list among many other things. But our hope would be that if buses could enter and exit, and whether it's one way or two, we still needing to work on that, off Central Avenue, that that would pull the buses, many of them away from those interior bus loops, and maybe create some additional spaces that could be used for cars.
I will add, I mentioned that we're recommending an architectural engineering study relating to the expansion of the classroom space. Part of that study would look at adding parking spaces to accommodate the school. There's a lot of wetlands around the school, buffer zones that have to be looked at. We may end up with better use of our money and more parking spots by having a professional firm come in and take a look at that. Yes. I have been stuck in that traffic many times myself.
Since we're on the topic of Geiger, I'm one of those three. I was there this morning, and I've been there other mornings as well. One of the simplest things I could foresee, but I don't know how, maybe I need to add it to the list or suggestion, is signage or even paint marks on the road to point arrows. Most of us know whether one ways or what direction to go in to be the best flow of traffic, but sometimes you get some dangerous situations where folks are not familiar which direction to go in, and or even to know this is the pickup drop-off lane. There's no sign for that, or I think the buses have a bus lane, but occasionally you'll get people going in there as well with the buses, which is, in my mind, kind of not as safe for the students as well. But is that something? I mean, I guess that is possible, but I guess we would add it to our list to possibly add something like that in there. Is that how that works?
Yeah, signage has been discussed. It kind of works hand in hand with trying to get the staff that directs traffic and brings the children out, and how we organize all those processes. So we've been working on that, and I agree 100%. There, if we can come to an agreement on how that all should be handled, you'll likely see signs out there for the next school year.
So I don't know if you have to add something or tell us a budget line item for paint or signs or something like that.
The signage, I don't.
Well, you don't have to get it at this moment. I'm just saying, maybe if we add it to the list, you can get that
Yes.
to Bobby, and we can
Sure.
review it when we have a review.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? Thank you.
So just real quick on the signage, but you're thinking that's already in your budget to put signage there once you figure out what you want to do?
We've talked about it. I'd to be 100% comfortable, I'd rather not say it's there at the moment. I believe there could be a $500 line item in there for signage, but I'll check and I will update you on that.
Thank you. Bill, you spoke of the program at Martell that we're trying to provide a service that's provided at other schools. How long has this service been provided at other schools?
It varies from school to school, but I would say from over the last 2 to 5 years anyway.
And then a year before we're going to be shutting that school down, staff thinks that that's a priority there?
Well, it's just there are a number of children there that are not getting the services they need, and I hate having them be penalized just because of the building issue.
But they were penalized last year and the year before,
Which,
up to 5 years.
right, but we've now identified a program that we feel will work for that school. We've identified a place where it could be located, and I think that probably principals Christy Clark and Steve Whitfield and could, address it more clearly than I. But from what I know, it's something. It's a service we should be having in all our schools.
Good, thank you.
I don't know if this question should be for you or maybe for Bill, but we talk a lot about parking at all of our schools. And just for my own information, from what I understand, the state determines how much parking like a new construction school should have. Is that true?
Yes, it's part of the DO Department of Education programming.
And
If I could just add to that. So in the case of Geiger, what was not anticipated when that school was built was the number of specialized services, particularly our RISE program, which is students primarily with autism. A typical autism classroom will have a teacher and 6 to 8 ed techs. So where we think of a classroom having, maybe 1-2 staff members, we're talking 9, 10 in many cases. And Geiger has 4 RISE classrooms. So that potentially is, 30 to 40 car spaces right there. When we designed the Connors Elementary School, we anticipated all those specialized programs, And we also built the rooms for them, which we're also seeing in all our schools. We don't have sufficient spaces to add the social workers and other support staff that we used to have. So I think do you know how many parking spots there are at Geiger right now? Yeah. So
No.
my guess, and these numbers may be wrong, is that there's about 160 spaces there. The Connors Elementary School is Geiger right now has 720 kids, something like that. If we were to open Connors today with the populations at Longley and at Martell, it would be a similar number, and we have 260 spaces there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question, but before, for what it's worth, I just wanted to give credit where credit's due to Mr. Turcott here, as well as Superintendent Webster. At a recent facilities subcommittee meeting, we went through and made some changes to the LCIP. What we'd be presenting, a lot of it was knowing what we need to do now, making those a priority, realizing what could wait a year or two, and then putting those in a future year. So there was a lot of due diligence done. There was a lot of hard work done. So they absolutely should be commended for that. And I know there was a lot of focus too on what Ms. Ray spoke about earlier, is not investing too much in buildings that we're not going to be using for a very long term. So there was a lot of diligence put into that. The question, kind of unrelated to anything we've talked about tonight, but I know some of the secretaries at McMahon will talk about it. The office space at McMahon is a bit compact and could definitely be expanded a bit. So, I mean, as far as priority goes, I'm not sure if it's definitely towards the top, but is there any talk about expanding the office or anything in the works at this point?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we did the last renovation at McMahon, this was one of the things I was keenly interested in. We actually had allocated $25,000 or so. The problem with existing office space is that closet there has got, all the communication, wiring, just, it was going to be, it was impossible to do it. So it's been in the back of my mind every year, because if you go into McMahon, the left side of that front entrance has got all that lobby space. It ends up being for storage. And so I think at some point, and we just, as much as anything, just didn't have the capacity to do it for this summer. It should be an LCIP project, and we should greatly expand that office, because you're right, we've got, for the most part, 3 employees in space that was really a design for one.
And I'll add that you have to give Amber Eliason, the principal there, a lot of credit. She's done quite a bit to create a more efficiency in the space they're using. We've created resource room out of a custodial closet and other similar items, and it's impressive. She's taken that by the reins and really pushed us all to help out and kind of make it as much as we can over there.
I would like on our list of things to revisit, I think that the doors at Montello they're on the removed. I just need to, I would like us to look at that more closely. That seems like a big concern. And then the other thing is, you talked about the responsibilities of this position that you haven't included but would be important to the work that you do. And in that conversation, you mentioned that you have there are 40 staff members working second shift with no real supervisor for that. But then you said you had an assistant that helped you during the day. Would it make sense to shift that responsibility to have, at least while you wait for this position, to have somebody who's a supervisor for that second shift? That's a lot of people.
Thank you. I think being near last on the list, I've caught on. We have given it a lot of thought. If it's hard to describe everything that the facilities supervisor does, from processing all the payroll and scheduling, a lot of calls that come in, sick calls and just not showing up are processed during the day. There's just a steady series of communication going on to try to fill those positions. If the facility supervisor was not there during the day, a lot of that would fall on me. So what we've done is we have taken turns to go out to the schools and stop by, and then we're putting a lot of extra effort into trying to give them a checklist, a task list that we can actually hold them to, expect them to do overnight, things that we know will take up their 8-hour shift, keep them busy, and then go back the following day to follow up and see how they've done. So we're using workarounds the best we can.
If you had the administrative position, the one that split,
Yes.
would that help with some of the daytime load
Yes.
that you are dealing with?
The administrative assistant would pick up quite a bit of time from the facility supervisor, and myself would share that in our own department. Yeah. So that would be key.
So I would like to put the Empower reallocation on our list. That may be using that software money. Could be one way to get them on Tello doors.
I'd like the board, is this on, it's on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like the board to know that the district in which I came from was half the size, roughly, of Lewiston. And there was a custodial supervisor on first shift along with the facilities director, along with a full-time admin assistant who managed all of the admin assistant work, as well as school dude, which we have in place here in this district. All of that right now is falling on Louis as well as Ray. And so what we didn't have in the former district that I came from was a second shift custodial supervisor, and that's only because we only had a handful of people on second shift. So I'm in agreement with you, Monique. This district really needs one. It's a big staff on second shift that's not being supervised.
I'm hearing this and I'm just trying to think and I know there were a lot of sacrifices made in the LCIP, but this is operating, and I think there are some more creative ways. So I guess my question is probably more to Bill about how we revisit this later. I mean, it seems like we could jigsaw Tetris this whole facilities budget in order to make room for whatever. So
Well, I think right now what's appropriate is for the board to identify things that would like to have on the list or be revisited. One of the things I'll just share with you that we're waiting to hear about is our health insurance increase. I spoke to the executive director of MEA Insurance Trust today, and while we're still probably a week and a half, 2 weeks away from knowing what those final rates are, I got enough information to believe that probably we're going to be able to cut that a little bit. We budgeted a 6% increase, and every percent is close to $100,000. So if we come at 5 as an example, that will be $100,000 that would be available to pick up some of these things without necessarily cutting something else. So I don't think the board yet needs to think about how we would fund it, because I don't think it's going to be a zero-sum game. I think we will have some additional monies, but we don't know exactly what it is yet.
and I think something else that became evident through this process tonight was specific building administrators and the programs that tie in with the facilities and operations. Is there a better way to represent that in the future and to understand that beforehand? It's just more a procedural question. I don't know that I have any suggestions.
But I do think we need to remember that staff and department heads who we charge with running the schools went through the entire budget, pared down what they felt was the important things, and we're still at a 12% increase in our budget. That is significant. And over the last couple of years with the minimum share, we've on average increased the budget $1 million every year. And correct me if I'm wrong there. So we are moving, I think we're moving in the right direction. And I think it's really easy, even for, when new committees come on, it's really easy to get excited when you see these things that we think we can fix instantly. But I just think we have to remember all the work that went into the budget and the increase that's already there right now. I agree, our job is not going to be to reduce this budget this year because we're at the minimum share. It's going to be reallocating if we feel it's important, but and doing that without forgetting the work that's already gone into it.
I think that's incredibly helpful. I think, sorry, maybe my point wasn't totally clear, but programs that are, so most specifically, we have on here the RTI teacher from Longley as possibly not being added, and no Martell upgrades, so that would impact what happens here. So I think just reconciling those two, and I guess maybe that's more a question for Bobby about how we're keeping this list and like if there are associated costs across articles, just trying to gain a better understanding of that. Did it make sense? Okay, thank you.
Just so you know that part of the process that I go through is it comes more at the end of everybody's budget planning. So after the ad teams have all done their planning, I visit every school, including technology department, nutrition department, and special ed department, to try to build off what they have. And then in reverse, go back after the first round of cuts have been made to adjust my budget. So it's there. There is room for improvement, and suggestions are welcome.
It's just unwieldy, and I appreciate the work that the admins are doing, to be clear. Thank you for that.
Just a few comments and observations on my part here. First of all, I've said this many times, I encourage all of you to go out and visit the schools. And one of my observations a few years ago was the gymnasium at the high school. And I thought I was going back in time. And to see that scoreboard, I didn't know about the motors on the bleachers, but it just felt like I was back in the 1960s, and that's the feeling I got from it. But to hear that the floor is going to be done, the scoreboard, and a few other upgrades, I think it was time to work on that. Wasn't there something else as well for the curtain or something in between the gym, or was that done last year? I can't remember.
No, from what I understand, those, with the exception of the motors for the bleachers, that's a relatively new issue that we need to address. But the divider curtains that split the gym up into three courts, refinishing of the floor, and the scoreboard and scorekeeper's table have been an ongoing issue for about 3 years. They've been requested each year.
And is the curtain going in or not? Right?
No.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if that was already addressed, so it's still a concern that we'll have to address in the future.
Absolutely.
Okay. But I'm glad that's ongoing. The concern I heard about Martell and the rise, I heard it from Ms. Ray and Mr. Kerr. I think it's like $2,700, and I know our school district is growing. That even Martell, as much small as it is, we're seeing the demand for rise in these students, and if we can alleviate that from the teachers by forming a classroom for $2,700, for less than $300 a month for just 1 year. I think that would be a benefit to our teachers and schools, but that's just my opinion. I'm glad we will review it later on. An observation for the daylight, the skylights, not only is it save on energy, of course, it does bring in natural light, which makes everybody feel a little bit better. And I would suggest that, when you go to the high school, there are other areas that don't have any light. And if you go downstairs into the art department, I think you'll recognize that. And even the new room, which was the old print shop, no windows, no nothing. Although it has a great ventilation because it was a print shop, from what I understand. So that's good. So there's definitely things everywhere in our district. But if we already have the skylight, it would be nice to put it in because it definitely does make a huge difference. And we heard you earlier talking about all the many hats you wear, as we hear from many of our administrators, but I didn't catch how long you've been here now? 2 years, okay, so that's what I thought. And in those 2 years, you wear all those hats and juggle all of this information. And I think you told me once this is approved, you'll have everything done by the end of the summer, is that right? Yeah.
No, I don't remember saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just,
Between keep in mind, even though it's summer, there's still summer school that we have to work around.
right. No, I'm just joking with that. I understand. It seems that way sometimes, but it takes a long time, I understand. And I'm sure the list never ends. I think you've done very well in the last 2 years, not only in the presentations you've done, but in coordinating all that. I think if, as a coordinator, managing all of that, I think you could use a full-time assistant in your office, as well as the technology department. Both David Terrio and his staff definitely are deserving of that. And I think once you have that little relief, that'll definitely improve our school district in many ways we cannot see ourselves. So I can see the definite assets in that. I hope that goes through very well. And but it's a pleasure having you here at our school. I see you at all these meetings and so forth, so I appreciate what you bring to our district. So thank you very much. Mm-hmm. You're welcome. All right. Moving to our last presentation of the evening for debt services, and this will be presented by our Chief Administrative Officer, Bobby Avery.
Hello again. So debt service is Article 10, and the 2000, and it's really quite short and brief. I'm going to go by the sheet that I handed out to you. The 2015 state average for debt service is 5.48%. The FY19 budget recommendation is at 8.08%, and that's due to the new Connors Elementary School. If we were not building that Connors Elementary School, the debt service actually would be 3.9%, so it would be well below the state average. And within the debt service category, that consists all of our principal and interest payments as it relates to all capital debt service, which means new construction, it means additions to buildings, and that budget is $6.6 million. It's important to note, and you can find this in your working budget tab B, section 3C, on the ED 279. You'll see in there, that's where the state lets us know, or lets the public know, what the subsidy is that we will be receiving and for what buildings. So for instance, you'll see the new elementary school there, you'll see Geiger there, as well as Farwell. And then if you look into your detailed budget book, you'll see on tab 10, page 1 through 2, the actual detail for all of the principal and interest payments that we're going to make, that we're obligated to make. They're all listed individually there. It's important to note as well that within the Article 10 debt service, we're also, we have debt service on the McMahon expansion, and I may not get this just right because I don't know all of our buildings and I wasn't here at that time, as well as an expansion. Is that correct, Bill? It was an expansion onto for McMahon. Was it a wing or
We've actually had 3 expansions
3?
at McMahon
Okay.
in the last 7 or 8 years, and they're all in that article because they represented new expanded space.
And then we have one at Farwell as well.
Yeah, this was the Farwell classroom expansion of just a couple of years ago. And then also the middle school, and this article only picks up the new portion, so that would be the front of the library and the science and art rooms.
So any, renovations that we may do to a building, let's say we're replacing windows, roof replacements, those all go into Louis' budget. They're outside of our debt service budget. Are there any questions?
Just a clarifying one. You said without Connors Elementary, did you say 3.8%?
3.9.
3.9. Oh, sugar. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And any payoffs coming up that will get us down to that state standard level?
Within the next several years, are you asking? I haven't looked at that. I'm not sure. I can get that for you, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One thing I might mention, because this ties into the minimum required local share calculation, the debt, the debt that's in Article 10 is part of that calculation of minimum required local share. So the expectation is if a community builds new classroom space, that there's the expectation that the local tax rate will be sufficient to cover it. Whereas debt to renovate Lewiston Middle School does not, as an example, does not factor into that calculation. So I'll probably be going over more of that with the presentation to the council on Monday. Obviously, this is going to be a big thing, but that's part of the calculation.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
So I have answers to some of the questions that have been asked. Is now the right time to go through that? Do we want to do that? Okay. So one of the questions was regarding Empower and Power School and the costs associated with each. As far as Empower is concerned, in the budget, there's $40,800 for the software maintenance agreement. And then we also have $15,000 in the budget in total for a facilitator or facilitators for Empower, which I believe, Bill, we might utilize for Power School.
Yeah, and at least from a preliminary standpoint, subject to board approval, our expectation would be those student reporting system facilitators are going to be every bit as needed going forward, because for many teachers, most of our teachers, it'll still be a new program that they'll be using. And in terms of the Empower charge, if we were to have a workshop day in the summer for all K-12 teachers that would be using the Power School software, we probably need another $30,000 to $40,000 to cover that expense.
There was a question in regards to our teacher leader stipends. And so and I'll start with FY17 because that is a complete year. We paid out $69,645 worth of teacher leader. And as of today, we've paid $46,300. And then there was a question in regards to the walking school bus program. And let's see if I can find my notes. We have Farwell requested originally in the 19 budget $6,500 for that program. They used to receive a grant through the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, which no longer funds that. That was actually cut. So the budget that you have before you right now does not have that $6,500 in it for the walking school bus. And Longley does have a little bit of money in this budget, $2,482, and that's remained flat in this budget versus the current year, FY18. And then I want to, in your packet or what I handed out to you, you all have a sheet on Ruth's reusable resources. We're going to end the night on some really cool information. So I contacted Ruth's, and they were very gracious and sent this to us today. And they broke out based on fiscal year, actually going back to 2013, the dollar volume in which this district has received. It's staggering. So going back to 2013 to today, let's take some guesses. We'll have fun with this. So does anybody want to guess over that 5.5 year period, how much do you think that we've received in benefits from Ruth's reusable resources? What's that? Close. One more guess. All right, I'm going to tell you. It's 700. So once we take our membership fee out, and I'll tell you what that is in just a second over the 5.5 years, once that's netted out, it's just under $750,000 that this district has received. The membership fee is roughly $29,000 for 5.5 years. That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. And I have that broken out, like I said, based on, or they did it for us, broken out based on fiscal year, but also broken out based on school. So that's pretty cool. I'll be sending that information to the individual schools tomorrow.
And also on that point, one of the things that Bobby inquired about was a district membership. And if I recall, it's about $3 per student. And this is a program that is predominantly used at the elementary level. So that would put it at roughly $10,000, which is basically just about the cost of 4 schools. So 3 of them already have it in their budget, and others are quite interested. So I think that's something that we should put on the list and go to a district membership.
So you're asking for that to be on the list? Okay. Everything you provided tonight, can you put that on the list, those dollar amounts, put it in writing for us and put it on the list?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How much is the district membership?
District, yeah, just have it maybe listed district first. I mean, we already heard the savings, but might be useful. I mean, 3 schools, and how much is it for 3 schools? I didn't. 7,500. So just add 1 more school, and I'm sure of the 6th grade schools, I'm sure they're not gonna say no. Yeah. Any other questions from the board? Anything else from you, Bobby? Well, thank you everyone I'm glad we had an audience tonight of 4 people who maintain. It goes to show the commitment from our administration. Oh yeah, any public comment? Back there. All right,
Mr.
thank you,
Chair, I move we adjourn.
We have a motion for adjournment from Mr. Oh, let's. All right, it's unanimous. There you go. So Jensen and Hutchinson.
Got it.